Have you ever wondered why life feels so complicated? Why do we struggle with choices, uncertainty, and confusion every day? Why do relationship, our connection with others, ourselves, and the world often feel fragmented, full of tension and conflict? These questions resonate with all of us because they reflect the human experience. In this video, we explore profound insights from Jiddu Krishnamurti, a philosopher who dared to challenge our deepest assumptions about thought, freedom, and the way we live. Krishnamurti invites us to ask, can we live differently? Can we free ourselves from the confusion and division caused by our conditioned minds and truly understand life, its beauty, its simplicity, and its purpose? At the heart of Krishnamurti's teachings lies a radical insight. Our minds are constantly shaped by the past, by culture, beliefs, and memory. Thought, which arises from this conditioning, cannot bring clarity or freedom. And yet, we depend on thought to solve our problems, to shape our choices, and to navigate our lives. But what if the key to clarity, wisdom, and purpose lies not in thinking more, but in seeing more clearly? What if we could observe life, our confusion, our relationship, our desires without judgment, without resistance, and without the limitation of thought? This is not about theories or abstract philosophies. It's about you, your mind, your choice, your life. Today we'll delve into Krishnamurti's teachings, exploring why choice arises only in confusion, how observation can dissolve the conflict between the observer and the observed, why concepts and ideologies divide humanity, and how intelligence born of true clarity can transform our daily lives. By the end of this exploration, you may discover something extraordinary, that freedom, clarity, and purpose are not distant ideals but possibilities that arise when the mind is silent, aware, and free. This is not just Krishnamurti's invitation, it's an invitation to all of us to observe, to question, and to awaken to a new way of living. The problem of choice and confusion. How can we live in this world without relying on the activity of will, without being shaped by the environment, the culture in which we exist? Why does choice dominate our lives? Choosing between right and wrong, the wise and the foolish, the good and the bad, this act of discrimination feels deeply ingrained. But is it natural or is it conditioning? When we observe closely, choice arises only in moments of confusion. Outwardly, if you know your destination and the road to it, there is no need for choice. The action is clear and free from hesitation. But when the destination is unclear, when uncertainty clouds the way, the struggle of choice emerges. Choice is born out of confusion. When clarity exists, choice vanishes. When we know what we truly value, there is no conflict. The action flows naturally. But when the mind is clouded, when doubt creeps in, we deliberate, we struggle, and we remain in conflict. So ask yourself, is it clarity you seek, or are you caught in the illusion of choice? Instead of striving to decide between this and that, can you bring stillness to the mind and see clearly? Because when clarity arises, choice becomes unnecessary. Life flows as direct action, free from confusion, free from conflict. Krishnamurti emphasizes that clarity dissolves choice. When the mind sees what is true, there is no conflict. The nature of confusion and observation. Krishnamurti challenges us to explore this fundamental question. Who is the entity that says, this area is confused, this area is not confused? When we ask, why am I confused? And observe without analyzing, we approach the problem differently. Analysis is the act of breaking something into parts, which leads to paralysis. The observer, the conditioned mind, separates itself from the observed, creating division. Observation is a total act. It is looking without judgment, without breaking things into parts. In this state, there is no observer. There is only the act of seeing, and everything reveals itself fully. This is the critical difference. In analysis, the observer and the observed are separate. When we analyze, we strengthen the observer, the past self, the accumulation of memory, knowledge, and experience. This observer divides itself from the observed, creating conflict and paralysis. But in pure observation, there is no observer, no thinker. There is only the act of seeing. It is this undivided perception that dissolves confusion and brings clarity. Krishnamurti illustrates this beautifully. When you look at a map closely, it reveals everything, where the cities are, the roads and the autoroutes, everything. In the same way, observe the mind without direction or motive. The whole picture is revealed. Clarity through perception. Most of us resist confusion, seeking clarity out of it. But this very effort creates further disorder. True clarity comes when the mind remains completely with what it is, without resistance, judgment, or the movement of thought. Krishnamurti reminds us that when there is no movement of thought as desire, no attempt to get out of confusion, confusion dissolves naturally. The light of perception brings insight, dissolves conflict, and out of that perception arises wisdom. This insight, the light of perception, dissolves confusion. Out of that insight comes wisdom. And With wisdom arises intelligence. Intelligence born of wisdom acts with clarity in daily life. It is this action, free from the division of the observer and observed, that transforms relationship and dissolves conflict. The observer and the observed. This brings us to the central issue. Why does the separation between the observer and the observed create conflict? When I say, "This is mine," whether property, rights, or beliefs, I create resistance, which breeds division. When I identified as a part of a group, like I am a Catholic, I am a Hindu, I am Indian, I separate myself from others. All division, both outwardly and inwardly, breeds antagonism and conflict. The central insights we get that the division between the observer and the observed creates conflict. The observer, rooted in the past knowledge, experience, memory, separates itself from the observed reality. For example, when I look at someone who has hurt me or praised me, thought creates an image of that person. This image, this concept, divides me from the reality of the present. Krishnamurti challenges us to observe without this interference. Can we observe without the observer? Can you look at a tree or at a person without the word, without the concept? To look at a tree without calling it a tree or a thought is simple. However, to look at a friend or someone who has hurt or flattered you, seeing without judgment requires the mind to be completely still. In this stillness, the observer disappears, and only the act of observation remains. The moment thought enters, the observer reappears, and with it comes division. But in total observation, out of silence, the mind can act without fragmentation, free from conceptual thinking. The dangers of concept and acting without them. While concepts have a functional role in practical matters, such as remembering an address, they become dangerous in human relationships. Krishnamurti observes that concepts give rise to ideologies. I am an American, I am a Hindu, I am a Brahmin, I am a Catholic, this and that. People have created a world around themselves, with which they have identified themselves. These ideologies divide humanity, breeding conflict and violence even while we cooperate scientifically or technologically. So the question arises, can the mind operate without concepts? Krishnamurti says it can, but not through effort or suppression. In meditation, the mind resolves these questions naturally. When the mind is utterly silent, free from thought except when necessary, it can act directly without conflict or division. Conceptual thinking creates division between thought and action. The mind reacts mechanically, first an idea, then action. This prevents clarity and fuels conflict. Krishnamurti describes a different state. Can you listen to me completely silently, without the interference of thought? Can you observe without trying to observe? In such quiet attention, action flows directly from perception, free from fragmentation and conditioning. Learning about oneself. The whole of humanity's history exists within each of us, embedded in our conscious and unconscious minds. But can we truly know ourselves? To know oneself through the lens of the past, through accumulated knowledge, is not real understanding. Knowledge is static, but learning is a constant, active process. To learn about oneself, the mind must be free to observe, free from the burden of yesterday's knowledge, free from judgment. Krishnamurti emphasizes, learning is not the same as knowing. To say, I know myself, is to stop observing, to freeze a constantly changing reality into a fixed concept. But when the mind is in a state of learning, alert, aware and free, it sees the truth of itself in the living present, and in that awareness, a profound transformation begins. So, can we free ourselves from the confusion and division? Krishnamurti shows us that clarity arises when we observe life, our thoughts, relationships, and choices without judgment or resistance. Confusion dissolves when the mind stops struggling to escape it. Relationships transform when we observe others without the filter of past concepts. Action flows naturally when born from perception, not conditioned thought. Krishnamurti's teachings reminds us of this truth. Clarity, freedom, and intelligence are not distant ideals, but arise in moments of stillness and total awareness. Life then becomes simple, whole, and profoundly meaningful.